22.2 Labor Market Trends and Fluctuations. In this chapter, we learn about the US labor market trends and fluctuations in these indicators of labor force participation rate and the alternative measures of unemployment. Unemployment rate. Figure shows the US unemployment rate over the 84 years from 1929 to 2013. Over these years, the average US unemployment rate was 7.2%, but from 1948 to 2013, the long term average was 5.8%. The unemployment rate was below this long term average during the 1940s through the 1960s and during the late 1990s and early 2000s. It was about the long term average during the 1970s to the mid 1990s and 2009 2013. During the 1960s, the unemployment rate gradually fell to 3.5%. These years saw a rapid rate of job creation, partly from the demands placed on the economy by the growth of defense production during the Vietnam War, and partly from an expansion of consumer spending encouraged by an expansion of social programs. Another burst of rapid job creation driven by the new economy, the high technology sector driven by the expansion of the internet lowered the unemployment rate to below average from 1995 through then early 2000s. The most striking event visible in figure is the Great Depression, a period of high employment, low income, and extreme economic hardships that lasted from 1929 to 1939. By 1933, the worst of the Great Depression years, real GDP had fallen by a huge 30%, and as the figure shows, 1 in 4 of the people who wanted jobs couldn't find them. The horrors of the Great Depression led to the New Deal and shaped attitudes that persist today. During the recessions of 1973-75, 81-82, 1991, and 2008-2009, the unemployment rate peaked in November-December 1982 when 10.8% of the labor force were unemployed. By mid-2011, although the economy had come out of a recession and entered into a slow expansion, the unemployment rate stood at 9.1%. While the popular representation of 2008-2009 recession compares it with the Great Depression, you can figure that 2010 is strikingly different from 1933, the year in which the unemployment rate peaked during the Great Depression. The participation rate. Figure shows the labor force participation rate, which increased from 59% in 1960 to 67% at its peak in 1999. The main reason is an increase in the number of women who have entered the labor force. The figure shows that 1960 to 1999, the participation rate of men increased from 37% to 60%. This increase is spread across women of all age groups and occurred for 4 main reasons. First, more women pursued a college education and so increased their earning power. Second, the technological change in the workplace created a large number of white-collar jobs with flexible work hours that many women found attractive. Third, technological change in the home increased the time available for paid employment. And fourth, families looked increasingly to a second income to balance tight budgets. In figure, the labor force participation rate increased from 1960 to 99 but then decreased slightly. The labor force participation rate of women has driven these trends, increasing strongly from 37% to 1960 to 60% in 1999. The labor force participation rate of men has decreased steadily through the past 53 years. Figure also shows another remarkable trend in the US labor force. The participation rate of men decreased from 83% in 1960 to 70% in 2013. As in the case of women, this decrease is spread across all age groups. Some of the decrease occurred because older men chose to retire earlier. During the 1990s, some arose from job loss at an age at which finding new job is difficult. For other men, mainly those in their teens and 20s, decreased labor force participation occurred because more chose to remain in full-time education. Alternate measures of unemployment. We have seen that the official measure of unemployment does not include marginally attached workers and people who work part-time for economic reasons. The Bureau of Labor Statistics (BLS) now provides three broader measures of the unemployment rate known as U4, U5 and U6 that include these wider groups of the jobless. The official unemployment rate based on the standard definition of unemployment is called U3, and as these names imply, there is also a U1 and U2 measure. The U1 and U2 measures of the unemployment rate are narrower than the official measure. U1 is the percentage of the labor force that has been unemployed for 15 weeks or more and is a measure of long-term involuntary unemployment. Figure shows the history of these six measures of unemployment since 1994, the year in which the BLS started to measure them. The relative magnitudes of the six measures are explained by what they include. The broader the measure, the higher the average. The six measures follow similar but not identical tracks, rising during the recessions and falling in the expansions between the recessions. But during the 2001 recession, U1 barely changed, while during the 2008-2009 recession, it more than doubled in less than a year. The alternative measures of unemployment are U1, people unemployed 15 weeks or longer, U2, people laid off and others who completed a temporary job, U3, total unemployed, official measure, U4, total unemployed plus discouraged workers, U5, U4 plus other marginally attached workers, U6, U5 plus employed part-time for economic reasons, U1, U2 and U3 are percentages of the labor force, U4, U5 and U6 are percentage of the labor force plus the unemployed in the added category. A closer look at part-time employment. The broadest measure of the unemployment rate, U6, includes people who work part-time for economic reasons. A part-time job is attractive to many workers because it enables them to balance family and other commitments with work. Part-time jobs are attractive to employers because they don't have to pay benefits to part-time workers and are less constrained by government regulations. People who choose part-time jobs are part-time for non-economic reasons. People who take a part-time job because they can't find a full-time are part-time for economic reasons. The BLS measures these two groups and figure shows the data since 1980. The annual average percentage of all employed workers who are part-time for non-economic reasons is a steady 13%, old definition, and 14% new definition, and this percentage barely fluctuates with the business cycle. But the percentage of all employed workers who are part-time for economic reasons fluctuates with the business cycle. It increases in a recession and decreases in expansion. In the 1981-82 recession, it climbed to 6.2%, and in the 2008-2009 recession, it climbed to 6.4%.